In this video, we're going to talk about how your beliefs are ruining your life and what you can do about it, because I know that a lot of people don't necessarily consider their beliefs. We generally live out of the mentality that we were raised with, meaning that our beliefs are based upon our past experiences, and we never really take the time to evaluate them. But I do know that my husband, for example, says he's a highly logical person and that he believes things based upon scientific evidence. And while I do understand this perspective, I think it is a horrible idea when it comes to actually establishing your beliefs for a couple of reasons. So if you fall into the same category with my husband, I'm going to explain to you why it is that you should probably consider different beliefs and why it is that your beliefs aren't necessarily serving you, and how you can go about choosing better beliefs to benefit your life that ultimately will give you whatever it is that you're looking for. So this is actually the foundational belief of pretty much everything that I teach. I think that your beliefs shape your life. And if you don't have your beliefs right, if you don't establish your beliefs correctly, you're going to run into issues. So if you're running into issues, you should probably be looking at what beliefs are shaping your behavior, what beliefs are shaping your life, and then determine how you want your life to go and what beliefs would benefit you better to achieve that end. So I always say, believe in that which benefits you, not in that which is proven, because all too often we go with scientific proof, not realizing that the amount of proof that we have for things, or the amount we know about just about anything, is so minimal compared to the amount of stuff that's out there that we don't know. So believing things just because they're proven is not actually helpful. And honestly, even if you did have 100% proof that something was true, would it really help you to believe in that? And ultimately, you want to have the best life that you can. So I would say, even if you have all the evidence, you still shouldn't believe something just because it's true. And I know that that's going to rub people the wrong way, but honestly, I can't change my mind on this. I'm not going to, because I don't think you should do anything that doesn't benefit you, your family, your life, your loved ones, the world. You know, those are important things. I don't care what's true. I don't care what's false. If it benefits me, I'm going to believe it. And if it benefits other people, I'm going to believe it. And if it benefits the world, I'm going to believe it. Because ultimately, when we go with that type of approach, we're going to have a better life. We're going to do more good, and we're going to create the type of life we want to have, rather than just be stuck with this mentality of things can never change and life sucks. So all things considered, I think it's very, very important to establish your beliefs. And let's start with why scientific evidence is probably not the best place to establish your beliefs. So I actually do really like scientific research. I enjoy looking at studies that people have done. I enjoy hearing about bits of information. I actually do very much enjoy research. I like learning new things. It's fun for me. I enjoy finding out what's going on with AI. I enjoy figuring out what's going on in the scientific world. When you've got doctors like Dr. Emoto, for example, doing experiments with water, like that was fascinating. I know a lot of people don't think that his research is valid or anything, but the basic concept behind it is fascinating. The problem with scientific research is that most of the time it doesn't necessarily help you. So you're getting this bit of information and you're using it to establish your belief structures, not realizing how damaging it can potentially be. And then on top of that, there are bits of scientific proof out there that kind of invalidate pretty much everything else, because they deal with fundamental aspects of life and they can't really be disproven at this point, and they mess with the results of everything else. So to start out, you have the double slit experiment, which I believe was done with photons, which are light, essentially. And what they did was they shot photons through slits, double slit experiment. And what they discovered is that based upon your expectation, the photons react differently. So photons will simultaneously react, or will react like a particle in some instances and like a wave in another instance. And then they further established this pattern by bringing in people to meditate and seeing if their thoughts could actually change the results, and they did. So the very fact that you can alter this fundamental building block of life with thought indicates that there is so much we don't know about what life is and what is possible. And the fact that these fundamental things can be influenced by thought indicates that pretty much anything in life can be, because on a fundamental level they are. And therefore, we have no freaking clue how anything is or isn't, because we cannot break it down far enough to actually figure that out. It's too complex. We can't research it correctly. And then you have the placebo effect, which is the concept of, because you believe something will work, it does. At the basic level, where people in scientific research will give medications and then they test it against a placebo, which is like a sugar pill, to see if the medication is more effective at treating whatever the illness is than the placebo pill is. And most of the time they discover there's not a huge difference in the results. And even if there is, there are plenty of people who recover even on the placebo because they believe that it will work. So we have these two extremely powerful pieces of evidence that indicate that life is shaped by our beliefs, by our expectations, and by our thoughts. And therefore, it's really, really hard to fully believe or trust in any piece of scientific evidence, because it does not take these things into effect well enough to fully corroborate whether something is correct or not. So as far as I'm concerned, choosing your beliefs based upon scientific evidence is a horrible idea, because we just don't know enough about science to determine what is and is not true, purely because we cannot determine how particles are going to react, let alone how larger organisms, which are 99.999% energy, will interact with things either. Just the differences between men and women, for example, make medical research extremely difficult and hard to predict. It is very hard to determine what a woman's body will do versus a man's, and even of those, you're going to have outliers every single time. So this is a very, very challenging road to go down, and it's the reason that I tell people most often, don't pick your beliefs based upon scientific research. It is not going to help you. So if you're not going to pick your beliefs based off of scientific research, what should you pick them off of? And I've given you a little bit of that answer before, which is you should pick your beliefs based upon how much they benefit you. Now, I know there are concepts out there that people think are absolutely crazy. For example, my husband tends to be atheistic and I tend to be agnostic. And I know that a lot of people are very, very set on their beliefs as far as this is concerned. And I know that there are going to be plenty of people who are like, well, what does it matter? How does that impact your life? Well, the belief in God has a huge impact on your life, actually, because if you believe there is no God, you are prone toward nihilistic thoughts. You are prone toward negativity, because the foundational belief is we are here on this earth and then we die and nothing we do ultimately matters. Whereas a belief in God of pretty much any kind gives you a level of default hope and an expectation that somebody's on your side. So the mentality of just that single belief could be enough to shape your life drastically in one way or the other. When you have a belief in God, you are more prone to positive thoughts, and you tend to trust things, and you tend to be hopeful about the future. Whereas when you don't believe in God, you tend toward the negative, you tend toward nihilism, and you tend toward decay. So all things considered, that single belief, for example, could shape everything about your life. So I would encourage people, some people say that if you can't prove that God exists, you have to, by default, assume that he does not. And I'm like, why would you do that? You're setting yourself up for failure. You should assume that God does exist, because believing God does exist benefits you. And even if they had definitive proof that God didn't exist, which, what's his face? Like Stephen Hawking believed that he made a whole documentary on it, actually, where he was talking about black holes and how black holes, time works differently, and God can't exist in that type of world, whatever. He believed he had scientific evidence that God didn't exist. And I was like, well, it's not actually evidence that God doesn't exist, but how does it benefit you to believe God doesn't exist? So I think we have pretty good evidence that Santa doesn't exist, for example, and yet the belief in Santa is one I encourage people to hold. Why? Because it gives you hope. Believing that Santa doesn't exist doesn't really have a major benefit to you, whereas believing in hope, believing that somebody cares whether you do good or bad, is actually beneficial in your life. So these are concepts that I think people generally think are stupid, where they're like, you shouldn't believe in Santa. That's not true. There's no evidence that Santa exists. You shouldn't believe in Santa. You shouldn't believe in the Easter Bunny. You shouldn't believe in tooth fairies. But do those things benefit your life? I don't care if they're true or not. Do they benefit your life? And if they do, why not believe in them? Because in all honesty, how's it hurting you otherwise? How is the belief that they don't exist helping you? And as far as I'm concerned, the truth becomes somewhat irrelevant in regards to your belief structures, because we're aiming at getting you to where you want to go. This is where the concept of affirmations comes in, where people are kind of lying to themselves by telling themselves they are something that they don't feel that they are enough times to where they start to believe it. That's how affirmations work. You're changing your belief structure. A belief is a thought that you think over and over and over again until it becomes your default. That's a belief. So choosing to believe in your own capabilities and choosing in your ability to figure things out is going to benefit you significantly more than believing probably the bits of information people have been telling you your whole life, such as you're incapable, you're too young to have this opinion, you are a woman so you don't know what you're talking about. I mean, whatever it is that you've been dealing with, whatever bias you've been struggling with, probably not true. There's no scientific proof that that is true. And so it makes more sense to believe in yourself and your capabilities. And therefore, I would encourage you to use things like affirmations or questions such as, what evidence can I find today of my own capability, to get yourself to believe that more often. And then you have things like the law of attraction, which I think a lot of people find really stupid, where they're like, law of attraction? I just think about something and it comes to me? Like, that's really stupid. But if you believe that, the chances that it will happen go up significantly. So why not believe it? And that's going to be the question that I'm always going to point people back to. Why not believe it? If something isn't benefiting you, drop it. If something is benefiting you, dig in, because that is the belief that's going to get you to where you want to go. I don't care what the proof is. I don't care what evidence there is. There's just not enough evidence to prove one way or the other that what you believe is either true or false. So choose to believe in the things that benefit you the most, that benefit the world, and that can create a better life for you, because ultimately that's going to give you the best chance you have. So I understand the desire for truth. I understand the desire for logic. But in a world as abstract and undetermined as ours, it makes sense to set yourself up for success as best you can. And your beliefs are the best starting place to do that. So don't let your beliefs ruin your life anymore. It's time to start reevaluating, questioning your beliefs, and then choosing the things that actually make your life better.